want to take you through a step-by-step sales process that I've actually been teaching a version of this for over a decade to people in all kinds of different industries: the printing industry, the insurance industry, the software industry, the manufacturing industry. This is just basically a sales process. I actually did quite a bit of research on the best processes for contractors, for builders and contractors. And I was pleased to find that all the research I could find from all the sources out there was pretty much the same process as I've been training other sales professionals in for a number of years, and which just confirm that selling. Now, are there nuances to selling building trades, contracting services? Absolutely. And I believe I've captured most of those today. I may have some things off. You do it, I don't. But I can tell you during the course of this presentation today, I'm really interested in what you guys are doing now, what you're discovering now. And please stop me as we move through here and say, well, hold on. What about this? What about this situation? What about this scenario? Because I promise you, if you've got the question, there's probably 8 or 10 other people have the same question. They just are not voicing it. So please stop me along the way. I'm going to pause every few minutes and check in with you guys during the course of this presentation to make sure we're not moving too fast or missing anything. And my big hope is at the end of this that you will have a linear sales process, a step-by-step sales process that's more defined, more clearly laid out for you. I encourage you to get it in writing so that it is repeatable and sustainable. That is a big key to having a good sales process. So we're going to talk about a sales process. And I truly believe if you again up your game using this process and some of the tips and best practices I'm going to share with you today, you're going to win more contracts, and you're going to win more contracts at higher margins. And I hear this a lot from many of my tab members who are on this call today, and we want to avoid building for or working with problem clients. And so we're going to talk about some steps to be able to avoid clients that maybe we shouldn't be doing business with, or we never really wanted to do business with. So, but having this sales process will help you. And this is a skill set that the very best of the very best of sales professionals know is a priority for them, is don't waste time with the wrong people. And so I'm hoping I'll be able to help you guys define as part of your process how to smoke out the people you shouldn't be doing business with, and providing free quotes and wasting your time with people who are never going to do business with you. Hopefully we'll also help you avoid those disappointed feelings when those quotes don't get accepted. And I'm going to talk about the one secret today that the most successful contractors, and again, based on a fair amount of research that I've done, will help you get higher margins. And again, avoid working with the clients you don't want to be working with. And then I really want to understand how you guys are approaching quotes and free quotes and giving away your knowledge and your numbers to people that potentially are just going to use it to help your competition. So we're going to talk about the 3 essential steps of a successful sales process. And we're going to learn how to stay on track without trimming your margin, to get the job. And I'm going to go into a thought process for that I think too many people in too many industries fall into, is they want to compete on price. And what I'm interested in and what this process allows you to do is to compete on value. Price is only an issue in the absence of value. That's an old saying. Price is only an issue in the absence of value. And this sales process I'm going to share with you today, I truly believe, and I've followed the same process for a number of years in my own business, builds value so that by the end, it doesn't come down to a competitive bid based solely on price. But let me ask you guys openly right now, how many times have you spent weeks working with a potential client, get them exactly what they were looking for, but not win the job? And any hands out there? Anybody want to raise their hands on that one? Yeah, it's pretty common. And mostly because they got a cheaper price from somebody else. And then also, how many times do you think they got that cheaper price and were disappointed in what they ended up getting? Pretty common, right? So when customers are making decisions solely on price, they pretty often make a bad decision, because we know what those we know what this bid costs. We know what this job costs. You guys are experts on what your goods and services and labor costs. And it's not like somebody else has a 20% less hourly rate or could get some discount on parts and equipment and the tools and the things they need to complete this job. And so what the trap that some people fall into is, I keep losing these jobs because somebody else comes in under me. And this is a slippery slope. So they start lowering their margin so that, you know, they start competing more on price. And before they know it, and I've seen this happen in multiple industries. I've actually seen some industries almost put themselves out of business because it became this head-to-head pricing war. Who could be the cheapest? And they enter a race to the bottom. And that is no way to be running a successful business, as you all know. And so quoting on more jobs and spending less time on each quote may help you with your margins and doing business with the customers you want to do business with. But you don't want to be taking bigger risk on smaller and smaller margins. You just don't want to fall into that trap. And some of you have probably been there. I don't think any of you are there now. But for today's purposes, we're going to talk about a linear step-by-step sales process. Do this, then do this, then do this, with a bunch of tips on how to successfully accomplish that. So now this is what I found in my research. For contractors that follow this or a similar path, but they have a written process, they have a defined step-by-step process that they follow every time, they enjoy a 28% improvement in revenue. And that research was actually done by the Association of Professional Builders. And I think that's an important number, 28%, by just following a process. And it's got to be a repeatable process, one that you do every single time. That's why big factories and big companies have processes. Is it eliminates waste. Once you find a successful path, why not keep repeating it? And as long as I'm repeating what brings me success, why would I ever want to change it? And once you determine your sales process, I'm going to give you the blueprint for one today. You've got to make it yours. Follow it with every single prospect, because if you don't demand and control the process, you're just going to follow the prospect's process, and that's not always good for you. In fact, rarely is that going to be good for you. That's how we start racing and competing on margin. So let's understand, we want to stop wasting time chasing prospects who in the end are really never going to build with you. We've got to understand who your ideal client is. We've got to understand how to build the right relationship with the ones that you do speak with. And then there's some common myths. One of the biggest myths in the industry is providing free quotes. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. I'm going to break and get your input on this. And the truth is that people say most often that this is they don't understand the difference between an estimate and a quote. So let me just stop for a second. Let me put that out there because I need educated from your standpoint. What's the difference, Rick, between a estimate and a quote in your mind?
Well, an estimate, excuse me, an estimate isn't a detailed figure. When that we in the roofing industry, it's just it's not drilled down with all the options. We always give a minimum of 3 quotes, not estimates. An estimate is just that. It's a ballpark figure, but we don't drill it down until we get to the true point of putting together a firm quote.
Right. And the difference between giving them an estimate and giving them a quote means you need to get more information.
Correct. Yeah, you have to drill down on what their needs are to find out, for us, are you flipping the house? Are you going to be there a while? Are you going to hand it off to the kids in a few years? What is the intent, number one? So you have to meet the needs of the client. A lot of roofers will just come out there and get one shingle off the roof. They want to sell you a new roof, and they'll write you up a price to do the whole thing and not really drill down to find out what the needs are of the client, to see what they really need and what the issues are and what their concerns are. So that's we try to drill down and then mold our quotes around the needs of the client, not just a cookie cutter. Here's a here's a price for a 30-year comp roof or 40 or lifetime roof. We really want to drill down.
Right. And that's how you build value, is understanding all the needs. You discover all the needs and reveal the ins and outs based on the discovery information you've determined from this prospect, which builds value in you. And they feel safer. Rick, I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm sure you would confirm this. They feel safer doing business with you because you've asked all the right questions, and these other people didn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there's 2 different scenarios I'll point out in our industry, is whether or not you're bidding new construction or recover. For 45 years, we used to have a division on new construction. Well, you're bidding plans and specifications written up by an architect and a spec writer. So you have to bid that. That's a little bit tougher. You offer alternatives sometimes if they'll take equivalency to the general specification. But on the recover market, you're a lot more free to really analyze what's needed for the customer.
Very good. Thanks for sharing that. And then Gina, in your industry, quotes and estimates, how do you handle those?
For interior design, it's more about the relationship, and because you're really building upon what the personal aspects of the client. And so when we do, I don't really do just quoting. That's, I think, definitely more geared with contractors, but I do a lot of averages. So I have an Excel spreadsheet that I actually give averages out to all my clients and say, this is what you can expect to pay for doing something like this, which would be maybe a kitchen remodel or a bathroom remodel. And before I get into the first meeting, they know exactly what their project is going to be estimated at. So that's something that I do for all my clients and all my projects. And that way it's not a price shock. You just get it out of the way from the very first get-go. And that happens before I even step foot in their house. So, and then if they want me to come out after they've seen that budget averages of construction costs, then I know I have a real client.
Very good. So you qualify them that way.
Yeah, I qualify based on talking to them and then giving them, some averages. Yeah, exactly. Construction averages in the Orange County area
Yeah.
so that they
Okay.
know.
All right,
Yeah.
very good. And Aaron, I saw you nodding your head. You've done this a couple weeks. How do you handle quotes and estimates, and how do you view the difference between those two?
We use estimates as a filter for identifying the seriousness of our client with us. So that then we'll move forward with a written quote. So a quote or a bid would be written writing with detail, but an estimate is over the phone to determine if they're even in the ballpark with one another. We are both in the ballpark with each other. So it's a qualifier.
Yes, qualifier, and it helps you from wasting time with the wrong people, right?
Yes.
All right, good. We are exactly on the same page there. So thank you for that. So, so part of this sales process has got to be, just like I've already heard, educating your prospects and helping them understand the design and remodel process, including price, and how they can avoid getting sucked in by a contractor who probably won't be around long enough, because they shoot off these estimates, sometimes quotes that are below what they know that they won't be able to complete it for that, and it becomes change orders, and that's how they change order their price up to some level of profitability, or if they don't, they go away. And you all have stories of contractors who have started jobs and then just failed to start showing up again because they ran out of cash. So here's some tips that are going to help everybody here. One, you need a sales process, and please document it, write it down. I'm gonna talk through these three main steps today, and again, make it your own, make it work for you, but please get it in writing. What if it's not in writing? Truly, it doesn't exist. But but once you get it in writing, that tends psychologically to help you follow it much more closely. And if you ever bring anybody else into your organization, it's already defined for them. The other thing too is you need to identify milestones. When this happens and you determine this, what's the next step? What am I looking for in qualifying? When they say this, what's my next step? And so next month, and I'm going to talk about this in a sec, we're going to talk about the customer journey, where they are in your sales funnel. And, from where they contact you as a lead, what's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step to sale and implementation or execution of the project? So we're talking about the front end, but where are the steps along the way for you and your business? Understand that because we've got to fit this sales process into your customer's path to signing a contract with you. And also understand the old Carnegie saying is, what gets measured improves. And we did a KPI presentation some months ago, but please, I encourage you, if you don't have KPIs established for your business, we need to get you some. Now, you got to know your numbers. Data allows you to study what's happening in your business. It can either be an early warning sign of something going wrong, or it can be an indicator of what's going really right. And I need to understand how I get the right part even better. Where I get success is even better. How do I prepare? We all have some level of capacity. Where's my tipping point and be able to handle additional successes? But I need to know ahead of time. I can't hire an additional person or go look for a different set of subcontractors on the day I need them. I need to be prepared for that. And KPIs will give you an early warning sign of what's coming. But if you're not tracking them, then we're doing it all through our senses and instincts and memories. And that's it's a very flawed science to be able to approach your business that way. So even if you're just tracking it on an Excel spreadsheet, have some goals, Understand those goals need to be tied to how many leads you're going to get, how many phone calls you're going to make, how many quotes you're going to make, how many estimates you're going to have, how many of those close and become a job, how many meetings you're going to have. Because once I understand all that, I can plan out my future. If I want to do $1 million next year, $2 million, $3 million next year, what are my numbers that's going to get me here? I spent a very frustrating couple hours yesterday with a sales executive with an aerospace company that's done it all from the gut for 28 years. And drawing that information out of him was very painful because he just done it by feel. And guess what? That feel had gotten him to where he was. But his boss says, no, you've got to triple that over the next 10 years. You've got to create some strategies to get to 3x where you're at right now. And because he had flatlined and been at the same number for 5 or 6 years. And as I finally started unpacking the activities that led to a sale, and then we started doing the research to find out, well, how many of those did we do? How many of these did we do? How many of those resulted in a sale? How many of those resulted in a meeting? Once we had a clear understanding, then all of a sudden the light came on for Charlie. And Charlie could say, oh, now I understand how to build a strategy around that. Before he was charged with building a strategy for tripling the size of his business, his division over the next 10 years. But he had no clue because he didn't have the data. So I'll get off of that horse for a minute and talk about probably, in the aerospace business, the sales cycle is 16 to 24 months. So it's a really long sales cycle because of all the engineering and design that goes into it. It's probably best in the contracting business, and I'd love to hear anybody's feedback on this, to be able to do your sales projections or study your KPIs by quarter versus monthly. Anybody have a strong opinion on whether it, Paul, what do you think? Should you study and track your KPIs monthly or quarterly in the contracting world?
I would think, well, it just depends on the volume of work. What's the size of the job? How many jobs are you doing? Are you turning? So for me, I would think quarterly. But if someone's doing more projects on a higher volume, then yes, probably monthly.
All right.
I know I need to implement some of this. I mean,
Yeah.
It all makes sense. It's just finding the time to sit down and say, okay, let's go do this.
Yeah. And so I encourage you, and I can help you with it if you want. So Aaron, I saw you raise your hand. You've got an opinion on this, huh?
Vaughn, I sure do, because we truly measure all of our KPIs per job, per week, per month, and rolls up into the quarter and the year. We capture every bit of it.
And what are share with us, Aaron, some of the KPIs you track?
So it all starts at the top. Sales is number one. Then labor is the biggest chunk, controllable, and then it's materials, which rolls downward to job per location. Every job's margin contribution that rolls up to the week, and then overhead is after that. And with labor, we control and measure both the field job, the location labor, and the labor with admin added in as well.
Okay.
So 2 different KPIs, 2 different controllables.
All right, excellent. And on the front end of it, before you start measuring the actual job itself, are you measuring, Aaron, any KPIs around sales?
No, I'm failing at that.
Okay.
I know I know my results. I know my close ratios, but I mean, I know I close approximately 40%, but of our inquiries, but I don't do a good job of that.
Okay. All right. So hopefully you'll pick up on a couple of things you might want to be tracking a little bit more of. And anybody else have any comment or say on quarterly, monthly sales KPIs, Rick?
Yeah, it's based on volume, like Aaron was saying. residential construction, you have a faster turnover because you're doing smaller jobs and you're done with them in a 3 to 1 week period. On the commercial side, what I did for 40 years, you're dealing with the bigger clients. Like my big account was Ralph Spawn's Food for Less, the grocery chain. Well, you had a 90-day turnaround before you got paid on something like that. So now on the residential side, we break it into some of your key KPIs is the different industries that you're bidding to. Because you have realtors, you got home inspectors, you've got the cold call coming in, and you have the account manager, the property manager. So you really got to drill down and see where you're putting your efforts into and what your kill ratio is. Because I spent probably a year when the pandemic hit working with the Orange County Realty Association. And I was on every one of their Zoom calls, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and all the chapter meetings. And what we discovered we had very few kill ratio versus the time investment. The return on investment of time is a big KPI for us. So we just decided in the last few weeks to pretty much kill that industry for the most part, because what we find out, there's so much time involved in putting together a bid or proposal for a realtor that's selling a property. They want to get the cost so that they can close the escrow. Then they close the escrow, and the new buyer that reduced the price of the house because of our estimate, we hope to get that job, right? 80% of the time, they never follow through with doing the work. They will take that money that they reduced to purchase the house and go out and buy a jacuzzi, or they upgrade something else. It doesn't rain in California, so we're going to put it off another year. So we really had to make the decision whether or not our time investment on that category of work was really worth it. So now that we have a social media guru, a Gen Zer, when you're hitting LinkedIn, Twitter, all the different social media sites, we're starting to track that to find out our time investment into those different ways of advertisement to see what a return, our ROI is going to be. But you really have to drill down. And like Aaron said, on your cost, the job cost, a lot of contractors just bid what they think is good, but they really don't track the hard cost to find out, hey, you lose money. When we were bidding new construction at an 8 to 10% gross profit, and you don't get paid for 90 days, and you got to hit the line of credit that's costing you 1.5%, per month. You got to see if it's really worth it. You have the big volume, but your ROI is lower when you can do a different type of work where your margins start out at 50%.
Yeah.
So you really have to analyze your industry on what you want to target and where your time is going to be invested. And you said it right. You have to know the numbers, and time is money. So where do you want to put your time into it? And it took us months and months of investment into that industry to realize, you know what, it's not worth my time, and change direction. If you keep doing the same thing, what's that adage? I don't remember, but if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect something different, it's not going to happen.
That's the definition of insanity. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Anyway, I don't want to digress too long, but that's right. Just some thoughts.
So Kevin, in your world, I know there's probably numerous sales KPIs that you're following, right? You're on mute, Kevin.
So what's KPIs again?
So key performance indexes. How many phone calls? How many leads? How many meetings? What are some of those that you're tracking, Kevin, on the sales side of things?
I don't really track it. I mean, it's like basically for me, it's more of a numbers game,
Yeah. Which is KPIs, right?
Yeah, it's just I don't really track things. I just know it's a numbers game, in terms of the more people you talk to. I mean, it's just you just gotta I gotta get in front of more people to get more sales.
Well, absolutely, and to that point, just like Rick was sharing with us, we've got to understand what people do I need to get in front of, and what's the best way to get in front of them, and what steps do I need to take? Where are they going to come from? Like I know in my business, if I want a new client in my sales training, sales management training business, I've got to send out 2,500 messages through LinkedIn. Because every 2,500 messages, that gets me one new client. Now, I can't just blanket 2,500 messages to anybody I'm connected to on LinkedIn. I've got to define, is it a CEO? Is it a vice president of sales and marketing? Is it the CFO? Is it the COO? Who am I targeting with these messages? And then what do I need to be saying in these messages, which all comes down to marketing. But I do know that if I send that out, I'll get this many phone calls or meetings with them. That number of meetings, I'll get X number. I close at about 85% of those. But I'm certainly in a different industry than anybody here. But I know exactly if I want to pick up another $100,000 in business this year, I know exactly what I've got to do on the sales side. How many meetings I've got to have, how many people I need to talk to, how many phone calls, how many emails. I know everything I've got to do in order to get that additional client. And I'm encouraging you all to dissect the number of leads that are coming in, how many meetings you're getting, how many quotes or estimates you're making, and then studying the ones you do get, just like Aaron and Rick were talking about, which ones are profitable. Which ones are my most likely, most profitable candidates? Because those are the ones that I want to narrow the field down to. And we're going to talk about marketing next month in a lot more depth. And with today's access to data, we can go exactly to where we want to go, to the targeted audience we want to go to. But I've got to get a certain number of meetings. If I make a certain number of phone calls or get a certain number of inbound phone calls, I set enough meetings, I have enough in-homes, I put out enough estimates, that's going to give me the waterfall of the KPIs I need so I can predict my business. I know exactly where I need to be spending my time. Rick, you raised your hand. You're on mute, sir.
Okay, I wanted to share one thing. That one big roofing contractor in Florida, a lot of their business is all new construction. They did it, and they're a big volume contractor. And they drilled down on the time and on their investment of new construction, and they switched their company over to a service, primarily 85% service business from doing new construction. Their profit margins increased like 5-fold because they were getting 55% markup, like I was mentioning, on new construction. On big volume work, you're 8 to 10% gross profit against, you're doing a 1 million square foot roof, tilt-up buildings that we used to do all the time. They changed the whole dynamic of the company when they realized how much time investment they're putting into that and their exposure on liability. I mean, you got to realize you do those big jobs and your liability insurance, workman's comp, and all that is a factor you got to consider. So when they went to a service only company, they love it. They changed the whole fleet of trucks to service trucks, and they're making so much more money than they ever dreamed of, and they're never going to look back.
Yeah, and that's one of those business lessons we come across in our careers sometimes, in that sometimes less is more. I can do less work and make more money. And they discovered, as you've discovered, there are certain things that I'm out chasing that I don't need to be chasing because it just doesn't make any money. It's not worth my time. So I'm not going to spend any time there. I'm going to disqualify anybody that wants that kind of work from me. So that's really smart. And thanks for sharing that. So Numbers. I'm going to ask you all, and it doesn't sound like a lot of people on the sales side are setting a lot of targets for themselves, or the folks that spoke up so far. But once I have my targets, I can make better decisions based on data. And when you got data, when you're making data-driven decisions, you will find areas of your business that are much more successful than others. You'll find activities that are much more successful than others, and you'll slowly be able to eliminate the time wasters, the money wasters, to where you've got a very clear understanding. But data is the only way to be able to determine that. We can't do that through instincts. And having the right data on the sales side, certainly on the job side, but on the sales side is that key differentiator that you must have, that I encourage you all to have, in order to make sure you're spending the right marketing dollars, you're spending the right time, you're qualifying or disqualifying the right kind of jobs for yourself, as it sounds like many of you are. So now, like I mentioned earlier, next month, I'm going to go into a deeper dive on marketing, and I'm going to give you a big marketing path that many of you maybe, if you've hired a marketing company, this is going to be exactly what they're doing for you. For those of you who don't have a marketing company working for you and putting together a sales funnel for you, I'm gonna provide that for you next month, and we'll get to that in a minute. So let's get to the sales process, because of course I'm running out of time. First step in the sales process is a qualifying phone call, and Gina shared with us earlier how she has a conversation with anybody that calls into her, and she qualifies them. And I'm telling you right now, you need to have a disqualifying mindset. Who do I not want to be doing business with? Because there's where a lot of profit is sitting in your business. And it's avoiding doing work with people you don't need to be doing work with. But these inbound leads, these people say, yeah, I'm ready to do a job. We've got to get the right information out of them to make sure they're either going to be qualified or disqualified. And how are we going to do that? Well, here's a few rules. Speed. Not sure everybody knows this, but according to the Harvard Business Review, and again, I came up with this from my research over the weekend, companies that respond to a new inquiry within an hour of them making that inquiry are 7 times more likely to progress to the next stage with that lead. And then two, and this goes across a lot of industries. And I'm surprised, back when I was in the car business, this was a stat there too. 50% of all buyers choose the company that responds first. Back when I was running CarMax, 45% of everybody that walked in that door, if we could get them there first, they were going to do business with us. And so we marketed to get people to CarMax first. It's the same thing in the contracting industry. 50% of buyers choose the first company they speak with. Now, second one, and this is where we start getting into salesmanship a little bit, is once you get that lead, call twice, because the first time normally you're going to get a voicemail. And if you hang up from that voicemail, or when you reach it, don't leave a voicemail, call right back again. Statistics show that your answer rate will go up by 50%. I'm much more likely to speak to somebody. Now, there's more than one of you sitting in the audience today that say, that's awful pesky. Okay, if you're uncomfortable with it, that's fine. I get that. But the stats show that you're going to talk to a lot more people if you hang up and call them right back. And that may pester you. One of the key elements, one of the key lessons in selling anything is understand how people like to be sold to. It may not be how you like to be sold to. In the end, because of these stats, 50%, if I can be the first person they talk to, I've got a 50-50 chance of getting in front of that customer, rather than all my competitors calling them ahead of me. And then I go down the path and they're never going to respond to me. I go down the list of priorities to where I become insignificant to them. So So when you call back the second time, if they don't answer, because 50% of the time they won't, leave a message, but keep it very short. And here's a trick. Here is something that works so well. Leave them a message, and you know, I've got on the screen right now, hey, this is Vaughn from Sky Custom Homes. You've requested a call back. I'm headed into a client meeting right now, because the last thing you want to do is start playing phone tag, message tag back and forth. That again is going to allow that competitor to potentially get in line in front of you. So you say to them, I'm going to send you a text message with a link to my personal calendar, so you can rebook a time that suits you. Speak soon. So you're going to hang up the phone, and now you're going to send them a text with a link to your online calendar. We're going to talk about how to do that if you don't know how to in just a second. And that gives you the best shot of actually finding a time, a date, and a time that's going to be on their calendar that is a scheduled appointment for you to speak to them. We avoid that whole rodeo that we go through and back and forth and times and days, and they're busy, you're busy, you got stuff going on. And so this allows them to pick a time that is open on your calendar for you to call back and have a conversation with. So what are those calendars? The two most popular that I'm aware of are You Can Book Me and Calendly.com. I use Calendly. I use it all the time. It saves me a ton of hassle. Is anybody out there using an online calendar for their customers to book appointments with them? Rick, you're on mute.
Yeah, we use when we make, we call it the pre-qualification call, that when the call comes in, and then we'll book on Team Up. We call it, it's a Team Up calendar on the availability of that person. We get them right on the phone, and we try to book two calls with them. The initial call to send a field technician to analyze it, then the second call within 2 days of our technician visiting the property to have a roof advisor go over our findings with them. So we like to book them right there on the spot. What is good for you, sir? We're going to be out on Tuesday. We're going to follow up on Thursday. What time? And put it on the calendar. You're done.
Yeah, it's amazing how well that works. And we're going to talk about making calendar appointments a little bit more in the sales process in a minute. This is getting that first opportunity to speak to them. So text them a link to your online calendar. And then the other thing too is, in research, I found that the most successful contractors book these follow-up phone calls, or these qualifying phone calls. Either they make themselves very available, they open their calendars, their availability for late in the afternoon, and they have some time over the weekend, typically on Saturdays, that they will conduct a qualifying phone call with a prospect. Understand we're a B2C for the most part industry out there. That's when people are available, is late afternoons and certainly on the weekends. And then here's something else too that I train hard when I'm working with sales teams, is preparation. And so have a qualifying script ready. Have a set, and I'm gonna share these with you in just a second, but have a list of 5 or 6, 7 qualifying questions that are important to you. I'm going to give you some examples of those. Have that ready and use it every single time. Know what it's going to take on your part for this customer to be worthy of doing business of you. And then do a little research on the customer. Look up the address, look them up on Facebook, so that you understand that it's in the right geographic area for you. Maybe it's in the right zip code for you. Maybe it's in the right price range for you. But what is their location? Do just 15 to 30 seconds worth of research before they call you or you speak to them. And then here's another sales rule: 3 by 3. Let me go into a little detail on what the 3 by 3 rule is. First, when you call, and leave a voicemail. That's a good first step. But remember, if they don't answer, you need to call twice. So that's the first thing we've already talked about. If they don't answer the second time, which there's a high likelihood they won't, leave that voicemail and send them a link through text to your calendar so they can book a time to speak to you. And then second, text. After you've left the voicemail, send them a text, because a lot of people don't know this. 90% of texts get read and responded to. Emails, 42%, phone calls, 10%. Text is the single most effective way to communicate with customers. 90% of texts get responded to. And then third, email them. So you're going to phone call them, you're going to text them, and then you're going to shoot them an email if you have that information. Again, with that link to your calendar. Now you've covered it all. You've covered all the bases to give them the opportunity to get in touch with you. And in that email, you want to send just a very short message. Hey, I tried to call you. I've left a message. I sent you a link to my calendar. Let's talk soon. That's the extent of the email. You don't want to turn that email into a sales email with all the great things that your company does. It needs to be brief. Again, we want to just start talking to this customer. And so that's as soon as you get the leads, you want to follow the 3x3. And then here's the 3x3 rule. On the first day, call them. On the second day, if they haven't called and booked with you, you want to follow the same process over again. Call, text, email. On the third day, this is when you're just going to say your goodbyes. This is a breakup. On the third day, if they still haven't responded to you, they've cut you off. They're either really busy, very disorganized. That's why they're not answering the phone. This probably has nothing to do with you, but you want to break up with them. You just want to say something along the lines of, listen, it doesn't look like you've got the time to speak. Here's the opportunity to speak to me. Book it at your convenience, but I won't be calling you anymore. And so then next step is the qualifying call. You've done some preparation. You've probably made some notes on a little bit of your research work, and understand that every word during this qualifying call that comes out of your mouth is intentional. You want to know exactly what you want to say, primarily what you want to ask, but there's a mission behind every word you speak. And so if you don't have some decent preparation going into this, you're going to be winging it. You may end up in this rambling long phone call that absolutely water downs the impact of your message. This qualifying phone call needs to be short and sweet and to the point. We want to avoid going off on a rambling diatribe and learning too much about this customer too soon. So what are the qualifying questions? I've got some examples here. Again, you're going to come up with your own. So tell me, Suzanne, what prompted you to reach out to us? So why us? Why did you reach out to us? Where's the home? What part of the home are you going to be working on? Have you got designs done? Who else is going to be involved in the design process? Because I need to understand what other parts I've got to deal with. And there may be history or experiences where you understand who all is going to be involved in the design, other decision makers, other inputs may turn you on or may turn you off or may create a different path or next step for you. And what's their timeline, which is really critical to your needs and slotting them into your schedule. And if it turns out that, and it's okay to talk about budget here too. What's your budget for this project? And I purposely didn't put that on here because some people are uncomfortable asking that in the first. I encourage you to ask that in the first qualifying phone call because I think it's pretty vital. And if it turns out they're disqualified, you just don't want to spend any more time with them. Make some notes in your CRM, and I encourage you to have a CRM. If you don't have it, you've got to have a customer tracking system. for a couple reasons, especially when we start talking next month about marketing. We need to understand who your prospects are, because no or disqualifying them today doesn't mean they're going to be disqualified forever. Things may change in the future, and I want to make sure I keep them in my database along with the notes I discovered during my qualifying phone call. I want to retain those notes that I can easily access, so that if this person ever appears into my queue again of prospects, that I already know what I've talked to them about. That sets me up for a much more professional conversation the next time I talk to them. So if you're not using a CRM, there's a bunch of free versions out there that will give you everything you need. Excel sheets are fine. If you're really good at being able to go back and do some search and find those customers in the future. And then your disqualified leads. And you might want to talk about, if they're not ready right now, if their timeline is too far out, when a good time to get back to them is. But more importantly, I want to find out whether they're a good fit for me or not. Are they even in a location that I go do business in? Is it too far for me to make money off of this job? I know many of you have a very tight concentric circle that you work off of from a job prospect, and if they're outside of that, it doesn't fit into your business model, disqualify them. And the best way to say it, and you know, it's just, hey, listen, for what you told me, I don't think we're a good fit. And you know, I wish you the best of luck looking for a contractor. You may or may not have somebody you can recommend to them, but if you do, please do. But making sure that we're just the end of this qualifying phone call, they're either going to work with you or be a potential lead, or they're not. Just don't want you wasting a bunch of time on people that are never going to do business with you. So I'm going to pause my dissertation here just 1 second. I'm running way over time, Paul. And I was afraid of this when I was laying this out. What do you want to do? Do you want me to continue on, or do you want to pick back up next month where I'm leaving off?
No, I think I'm fine that you continue on. I think, yeah, let's keep going. It's only 8 o'clock. Typically, we take our meetings to 8:30. So
Okay, cool.
We still have time.
All right, great. Thank you for that. So qualified, they're either going to be not now or not never. But you're going to have to make that determination based on that qualifying phone call. If you do not have, as part of your sales process, a qualifying phone call, please have that phone call before you go visit this customer, to save you time, save you energy, and keep you from wasting your most precious commodity, which is the hours in a day. And so now, reasons you disqualify are going to be unique to you. And it could be the knowledge you gained from this. It could be that they're not ready to start building or planning for this. They may not have the budget that is reasonable. You don't want to try to start selling them and upselling them and understanding. You don't want to start selling them during the qualifying phone call unless they're fairly close on their budget. And you can ask a few more clarifying phone calls that, have you considered this? Have you considered that? You can work them from a knowledge standpoint briefly into this, but be careful wasting time with people that just do not have a realistic number that you're willing to work with. And then make sure you break up. Send a good, clear goodbye message that we're just not going to be a good fit. I appreciate it, because again, I don't want to burn any bridges. They may be a prospect sometime in the future, or in their own research, they may find that, hold on, I'm being unreasonable. I need to go back to that person that treated me so nicely on the phone and made some recommendations to me, to have a conversation with them again. We want to do it nicely. We don't want to burn bridges. Now, here's the ones that are really interesting. the ones that are qualified, which are going to be a lot of the people you talk to. So if they, in fact, after your qualifying phone call, you give them the positive thumbs up, there's somebody I want to do business with. They're in the right zip codes. They've got the right budget. They've got the scope of the project fits into my business very well. And well, again, the purpose of the discovery phase is you also want to make some emotional connection. You want to come across, and again, this is the intentional words that you're using. You want to make sure you come across very professional, very curious, very empathetic to their needs. We're going to talk a little bit more about empathy in a few minutes. And if this all fits and you determine that they are in fact qualified, we want to move to the next phase, which you may call discovery. And discovery basically means I'm going to set an appointment and we're going to talk deeper into this project. Or if they're ready to talk right now, let's get some of these discovery phone call questions out of the way. But first, I've got to qualify them. I don't want to start discovering before I qualified. I want to get qualifying out of the way. Then I want to move to discovery. And those discovery is getting a much deeper understanding of their needs, their pains, their fears, their experiences, but most importantly, what is entailed in their job and their mind. Sometimes you can do that partially on the phone. Sometimes, and I tend to want to do this as a separate phone call so that I can be prepared to ask 20, 30, 40 questions that will give me the full scope of what these folks are looking for. And I, more importantly, can understand their emotional needs, because the decision to do business with you is always going to be emotional. People make their decisions based on emotion. They may justify it a little bit later with logic, but almost everybody, us included, there's some emotional need that we're reaching out to fill. And so I encourage you to schedule a meeting, find a day and a time, always send a calendar invite. That is one of the best tips. If you're not doing that now, I can share with you, is when you set an appointment, send them a calendar invite. Your show rate and your likelihood of that, either them not being there or them changing it, goes down dramatically when they've got it already booked on their calendar. Make sure that you follow up the day before with either a text message or a phone call. Hey, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. And listen, the meeting can be in their home, in your office, wherever you want it to be. But we want to get face-to-face. The sooner we can get in the room or face-to-face with somebody, the better. And thank God we're finally starting to move away from the COVID situation. Things are starting to loosen up. People are being a little more comfortable, not a lot more comfortable, but I think in the next 90 days or so, the mask mandates will start dropping and people will be a lot more comfortable meeting us face-to-face. I'm hoping and praying. But before we have that meeting, I encourage a pre-meeting phone call. So you're gonna send them a calendar invite the day before. You're gonna send them a reminder. You're gonna call and remind them, and then it'd be really nice if you could get them on the phone and say, "Hey, listen, I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Here's what we're going to talk about." And you set the tone. They already know that I'm going to come in. I'm going to get a full understanding of the scope and the needs of your project. I'm going to understand how I need to tailor my work to what your needs are. I'm going to find out everything I can about you and your home and what we're going to be doing there. And listen, this meeting can be scheduled, a week out, 2 weeks out, a month out, whatever it might be. But just make sure you confirm the meeting with a phone call and give them an overview of what you're going to be covering. I also encourage that you send them an agenda. You email them, here's what we're going to be covering tomorrow. So I've told them what we're going to talk about. I put it in writing. That tends to lower the barrier of trust when you're dealing with a prospect. They know what's coming. It shows a level of professionalism that, believe me, most of your competitors will not show them. So let's talk a little bit more in detail about that. Your sales meeting, what you do before, what you're going to do during, and what you're going to do after. So you've confirmed the phone call. You've sent them an invite. You've confirmed the meeting. On meeting day, you've got an agenda prepared. I encourage you to send this ahead of time to the prospect. And it just needs to be bullet points. It doesn't need to be detailed. That I'm going to get to know you. I'm going to get to understand the scope. I'm going to talk about, and we're going to talk about price. And this is what I hope to achieve at the end. We're either going to be a go or a no-go on your project. I'm either going to be the right contractor for you, or I'm not. And if there's any meeting or any information you need from them, prepare them. Let them know. Here's what I'm going to need from you. Give me a copy of the design if they've indicated they've got a design. Bring me pictures of what you're looking for. Whatever you need from them, so that you get a crystal clear understanding of what they're looking for in this project. Prepare them ahead of time to have that ready for you, and bring it to the meeting with you. And again, discuss that agenda and say something along the lines of, we're going to have a deeper discussion about your budget, the details of the home, exactly what you're looking for and what you're looking for, so that we're on the same page. And remember, at the beginning of this discussion, I talked about price is only an issue in the absence of value. These kind of conversations build a ton of value in you. They build a ton of value in doing business with you. Because again, I assure you, the vast majority of your competitors are not doing anything along these lines. They are not following a process like this. And this is a process that has been designed over decades. It's been proven over decades to work. And again, whether I'm working with a manufacturing company, an aerospace company, a textile company, a plastics company, you name it, this is the same process that I encourage those sales professionals to follow too. And I was, again, as I'm doing research on the best sales processes for contractors, here it is again. Have the agenda, discuss the agenda, get it to them ahead of time, the confirmation phone call. These are all just extra steps that aren't so much busy work, because some of you may be saying, God, that's a lot of extra work. What you're doing, it's intentional. It's very intentional. I'm not doing this just to do it. I'm doing it because it's building value. And the more value I build, the more in the way of margin I can get out of this prospect. The price I can demand is going up. And at the same time, I'm blocking out any potential competitors, because they're not going to present themselves at the level you're presenting yourself following this process. So it's the day of the meeting. They're in your office, you're in their home, you're doing a Zoom call, however you're doing it. Make sure as you're going through and you're doing discovery, you're asking questions, that you're taking notes. That sends a very powerful message. And I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are doing that. But understand, again, that's building value. Your margin is going up with all these little tips I'm giving you. So take detailed notes. You're going to need them in a minute as a following step in this process. But take some notes, take some detailed notes as they're speaking. That shows a couple things. One, that what they have to say is so important, you're writing it down. And then secondly, that again, you're getting ready to use these notes in a few minutes. It just looks so professional when you do that. But what you're trying to determine in this early stage of the meeting is their emotional needs, any past pains they've had, any fears they have. And then again, you've got to remember that that you're being qualified at the same time that you're in here discovering. And as they're qualifying you based on the level of these questions, the importance of these questions. And this next thing, which is empathy before expertise. Way too many people, I don't care what they're selling, want to go in and do a pitch. Here's what I do. Here's how great I am. This is how long I've been in business. Here's all the customers I've done business with. That's all nice. At this point in the journey with the customer, they don't care. This is not important to them. So if you lead with expertise and all the things you do and what your company does, you're dissipating the value that you're building in yourself. So always start with discovery. Make it about them. Make it very empathetic. It's discovery. It's understanding them as humans, as people, as prospects, and their needs. And ask, have you ever remodeled a home before? Have you ever hired a paint contractor before? Have you ever put a deck on a home before? Have you ever landscaped a home? Whatever industry you're in, have you ever done this before? What were your experiences? What did you like about that? What didn't you like about that? Did everything go well? Why aren't you using that same contractor again? What are you looking for in your next one? To describe the perfect contractor to me. You want to understand exactly what they're looking for, because this is going to come in handy in a minute. And understand that every customer, unless they've done business with you 10 or 12 times, they have some level of fear in them. Now, fear is also an acronym. False expectations appearing real. False expectations appearing real. In the absence of knowledge, in the absence of experience, very often every prospect you're talking to has some level of fear. And with that fear, there is a barrier of trust. And by doing a very thorough and professional job of discovering and making this meeting all about them, being very empathetic. I'm not talking about myself. I am not at this point talking about what I can do for them. It's all about them. I am slowly lowering that barrier of trust, which at the same time is raising value in me. And you're completing a process that allows you to get the margin, get the price that you're looking for out of this customer, fair, equitable, that is going to be profitable then and within profitable for you and within budget for them. But it blocks out all of your competition. Trust me, it does that. You're taking notes, you're making it all about them. And really, you should have a simple or a super clear understanding of what they're looking for. Now, here's the next step. Once you feel like you've got that, I grasp exactly what you're looking for, Mr. and Ms. Customer, I want to repeat it back to them. I want to paraphrase it back to them. Thank you, Paul, for sharing all this with me today. I want to just make sure I got everything right. You've owned this home for this long. You've done a couple of remodels in the past. Here's been your experiences with those contractors. Here's what you're looking for in the next contractor. You're looking to spend somewhere in this neighborhood. You want this, you want that, and this is critical. And it's hard to remember. It seems so simple, but this is critical to then say, did I get that right? Did I get that right, Jim? Did I get that right, Sally? Did I get that right? It seems very subtle, but it's super powerful for a couple reasons again. If I ask that question, if I got it wrong, I get corrected because I'm getting ready to go to my presentation. I'm getting ready to start talking about all the great things I can do for this customer. If I have any of that wrong, I need to be corrected now because I don't want to say the wrong thing in a few minutes. And then secondly, as I've been repeating back to this prospect what they've told me, and they've got an objection, I want it now. I want it now so that I can get that out of the way and not have to scramble later after I've made my presentation. I want to get it done before I get to my presentation. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. You want to clear all that up. You want to make sure you have all the information you get. So you've got to not only paraphrase it back to them. This is key. This is called active listening. Paraphrase it back to them and then clarify and say, did I get that right? That puts the key in the lock and turns it. If you got it right, and most of the time you will, they're going to nod their head. They're going to say, yes, 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 that's exactly what we're looking for. You just got this deal, and you got this deal at a price that's going to be beneficial to both of you. You completely lowered that barrier of trust. You're on the same page. You're on the same level. You become part of their tribe. You are now inclusive with them. It's amazing how this changes the mindset of the prospects you're going to be sitting and discussing their goals, their needs, their pains, their experiences with. And now you've earned the right to start talking about your expertise, what you can do for them. And you want to make a recommendation. And that's again, you've been building value during this whole process. Again, this is very intentional. This is one, to find out all you need. More importantly, if not equally importantly, it is building value in you in the eyes of this customer. Say something like this. Jim and Jane, I have some recommendations for you on how I think you ought to approach this project. Then make your presentation to them. Talk about where you see it, how you would approach it, where you would acquire materials from, the timeline to get it done, setting the right expectations for the job. But it needs to be tailored to only what they shared with you. You don't want to be talking about the number of years you've been in business if they haven't ever brought up that that's a concern of theirs. How long you've been in business. Don't bring into the equation or the conversation things that they haven't brought up. Tailor it exclusively to what they've shared with you. And again, this builds value. As soon as you go afield of other features and benefits of doing business with you that they haven't brought up, you're losing them. You're boring them. You're all of a sudden they're disconnecting from you. And the underlying motivation behind all of this is I want them connected and following along with me the whole time. I'm in control of this, and I want to keep them connected to me throughout this entire process. And that's the linear part. That is the linear part of all this, is you're going to move this meeting to the next step. And that next step may be signing the contract, getting the numbers over to them and having them sign a contract. It may be that we need to have some more discussion. We need to do some more research on the job. We're going to schedule an appointment for that. But make sure they 100% have felt heard, that you've acknowledged that you've heard them. This typically takes 20 to 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer based on how talkative or how in-depth this project is. But that is the linear approach to closing more deals at higher margins. And then at the end of all this, you're going to transition to the next step. It may be, again, getting the job, but it's certainly at some point very soon it's going to go to you making an offer to them. And you may say something like, let me walk you through my process now. Here's what we need to do. Always speak in terms of we, us, you, never I, never me. And so this is what we're going to do. Let's do this. Use those kind of terms. Avoid using terms that are focused on you. And then walk them through the process. This is how I do these things. And here's why we do these things. And by doing that, you're stepping them through what the journey is going to look like in the future. And that gives them a ton of confidence in you. You'll be able to paint this mental picture of what this whole thing is going to work like for them. And once you've made your presentation, this is how all this is going to work. At the end, they're either going to give you the job or you've got to make a clear next step. And that clear next step many, probably 20% of the time, somebody's going to want to think about it, and that's okay. They may say, yeah, we're going to need today to talk about this. Don't say, well, I'll just call you sometime tomorrow. No. What time tomorrow am I going to call them back? Well, I'll tell you what, that's great. I understand. A lot of people need to think about this big decision. So I'm going to call you at 4 o'clock tomorrow. You're free at 4 o'clock tomorrow, and send them an invite and a calendar invite, and then call them at 4 o'clock tomorrow. Set an appointment. Always set an appointment in the calendar for any kind of contact back with them. Do not ever leave it and ambivalent as to, or ambiguous, I'm sorry, as to when and who and how this next step, because again, this is all very intentional. This is very linear, and we're going to go from this step to this step to this step to this step, and they won't always make a decision then. I understand a lot of my customers need a day or so to think about this. I'm going to call you on this day at this time. Here's a calendar. You've got to have a very clear next step established. Never leave that vague. So get a commitment from them to move to this next step. Now, you're going to have objections, and that objections can come in many forms. But if they say, no, I can't decide right now, give us a couple weeks, don't ever say, well, I'll check back in with you. Checking in is a bad word. Don't use it. I'll call you next week from a customer is really just a polite no. It's not going to happen. Be careful of that. Don't trust that they're going to call you. You never leave it up to a prospect to call you. You're always going to call them. And I also say this, in fact, I said it to a client last week, is, well, I want to put this on hold for a little bit. I'm not ready to do this right now. And I said to them, and I smoked it out. I said, okay, Jane, whenever someone tells me that they just want to go away and think about it for a little bit, it usually means because of price. And that price isn't exactly what they would like for it to be. And is that part of the why you need to think about it? I want to know that. I don't want to be chasing this customer down and wasting my time if they're not going to do business because the offer that I've made them is out of the league for them. But say, and I've said it 100 times in my career, hey, when people say that they want to go away and think about it, that usually means this. Is that what you're saying? And I even say that sometimes is a polite no. Are you trying to say no right now? And I'm okay whichever way. I can take yes, I can take no, but I can't take, I don't know. I need to know one way or the other because we're still qualifying each other. So get that clarity, make it very clear what that next step is going to be. And listen, if they say, yes, you're not somebody I'm going to do business with, fine. You're not going to waste any more time with this person. But if they agree to a written proposal, then you want to get busy with that, get that over to them, set again a date and time to be able to cover that with them. You don't want to be doing any free work at this point. You want to make sure that you're moving things forward with the right people. And I've rushed a little bit at the end, but let me stop here just 1 minute for questions or comments. Anybody have any questions about what I've talked about? Raphael.
Thank you, Vaughn. Great presentation. My question is regards the timeline of all the process. Is there a specific timeline for that you think it's appropriate, or is how do you say it?
Well, I think you'll yes and yes. So in your qualifying phone call, one of the questions you ask, what's your timeline? When do you want to get this done? That's going to determine a part of that answer. But there's a rule of thumb. There's an old rule in sales, Raphael, that time kills deals. Time kills deals. And the quicker you can get in front of them, the quicker you can move to the next step, it's better. But it's got to be comfortable for them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I typically like to, our next step is going to be within 48 hours. That window of time is pretty safe. 24 is better. But when people want to talk 2 or 3 weeks, that's a slippery slope.
Because you want to be the first, like you said, right?
It improves my chances by a lot. Rick, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I wanted to just say a couple of things. You hit a home run today. I mean, these are valuable points that you made. And a couple of the key ones that really struck home for me that I think need to be reiterated is number one, CRM. You need a CRM program to follow up on your pipeline. Know the numbers. That's a big thing that the small contractor trying to grow his business will lose and go out of business within 3 to 5 years if you don't know your numbers. Have systems in place like you talk about. We have a 3-ring binder where we can hire somebody off the street, and within a matter of a day or two, they can become that salesman to ask the questions that need to be answered on the pre-qual and take them all the way through to the following close. The biggest one I like that most salesmen miss is you sell on emotion. You have to drill down and capture what their needs are. If we have a client that tells us, oh, by the way, I've got a leak in the nursery and I've got wet drywall and I'm worried about black mold, right away, that's a home run. I mean, you know that you captured the emotion that they're going to respond to. So sell on emotion, it's all about, don't tell me how much you know until you show me how much you care.
Well,
that's one of the adages. So home run, loved it all. Thank you very much. And I think we just need to make this muscle memory and put it into our own businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that. And even a leak in a roof can be emotional, right? A paint job can be emotional. Everybody has some emotion that drives their decisions. And if we skip that or we overlook that or we discount that, we are missing out on our sales opportunity. Anybody else? All right. Paul, for you, what's another key takeaway for you today?
Really, I've started qualifying people and not giving away free pricing. That is such a trap, and it's so easy to fall into because people expect that, and you want to, even prospects, take care of them instinctively. And so, but I know there's a lot of improvement I can make, writing it down, getting it linear so that you're following that step. The things that you're talking about right now, I'm relating to my immediate clients that are sitting in front of me. Some mistakes I'm making that you've pointed out, and other things that I think I'm doing right that just need to improve on. So, Rick, well said. Vaughn, this was a really good one. I'm getting a lot of people in chat saying, hey, is this being recorded? Yes, and it will go up to Basecamp. And so this is one that even people that couldn't make it reached out to me yesterday. Can this go up to Basecamp? And so we'll make sure and do that and share that.
Good to hear. I'm glad to hear that. And the other thing we probably ought to think about doing, I ought to probably think about doing, is I've got a whole module on just how to ask these questions. Active listening, and we can talk about some of the questions. I think it'll bring out more of the questions, these emotional needs, and understanding that process, because that takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of commitment to follow that, because especially for men, because we're not good listeners.
Yeah,
we're terrible listeners. We're action oriented. We want to hear a problem and then we just want to tell somebody how to fix it, and that's very detrimental to this whole process. It limits your success. So I think next month I ought to talk about the marketing process. But based on what I'm hearing in the way of feedback this morning, maybe I'll talk about, go a little deeper into active listening next month, and then we'll go into the marketing process.
It's very important. It's good stuff, Vaughn. Thank you again so much.
I love you guys. Thank you for this opportunity. This is one thing I look forward to every single month. So, Pierre.
Yeah, also, if you print in the menu, all the breakdown of the presentation is on there.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And I made that a nice clean handout too, so that it's easy to print.
Yeah, got that.
And
Okay.
that went out to everyone. So what I typically do is ahead of the meeting, the day before, send out an email with any attachment, send out a text with the link and an introduction. So hopefully you guys are all getting that. And again, Vaughn, thank you very much. Great.
Yeah, thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate it. We'll talk
All right.
soon. Have a great week.
Okay, have a great
Keep up the
day,
good
you
work.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.